The book is always better than the movie. This is an axiom that is tossed around quite frequently. Well, it's maybe not 100% true. As a reader and watcher of movies, I find that it is often the case. While the book is typically better than the movie version, the movie is also usually better than any video game adaptation. Again, there are exceptions to this rule, but there are a lot of games that have been based off of movies that just aren't that good. That doesn't bode well for the game that I'm looking at today. I'm looking back a number of years ago and reviewing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. This is based off the third Indiana Jones movie of the same name. Does this classic video game adaptation serve as an early example of a game that is equal to or better than the movie? Did it serve as an early example of games getting it wrong? Is it simply a game that was good in its day but fails to really impress now? Let's find out. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is a point-and-click adventure game developed by Lucasfilm Games. It was released in 1989 for PC. You can find it on Steam now for $5.99 at full price, and it is rated E for everyone. The story here generally follows the plot of the movie. It's been quite some time since I've watched the movie, but I felt like there were a number of parts that didn't make it to the game. I also felt like there were some parts of the game that were expanded and made longer because they were turned into puzzles and mazes that were needed to be figured out. So in the course of the game, some parts were lengthened to make it more video gamey. There is definitely enough here to have the plot be coherent, but it did also feel a little lacking to me as well. While the basic events are present, there really isn't anything approaching character development in the game. This makes some of the moments feel a bit empty compared to their counterparts in the movie. It should also be noted that the game has a very Lucasfilm Games, LucasArts humor to it that is different from the humor of the movies. One of the most enduring examples of this is Indiana Jones telling a Nazi guard that he's selling these fine leather jackets as an excuse to why he's in this top secret castle facility. There are also references to George Lucas and Steven Spielberg throughout the game, so the humor leans toward the silly and fourth wall breaking. How much you'll enjoy this will probably depend on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a faithful retelling of the movie, you might be a little disappointed. If you're looking for a Lucasfilm Games / LucasArts spin on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, well, you are in luck. The gameplay of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade will probably be where the game loses people. While in many ways the game has much of what you would expect a point-and-click adventure game to have, it also has a punishing difficulty that feels arbitrary and as obtuse as possible. The setup of the game has a list of commands for you to use on the environment around you and the list of items at the bottom of your screen that constitutes your inventory. In many ways, this is similar to how point-and-click adventure games are to this day, with slight variations. You use these commands and items to solve puzzles, talk to people, and just generally figure out how to progress in the game. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade has a number of design choices that make it very frustrating, probably to old audiences, but definitely to modern audiences. The game doesn't really have a gatekeeping system, and what I mean by this is that you are able to progress in the game even if you haven't fully found all of the information you need at a particular location for later puzzles. And this can be a pretty big problem, as it is never fun to realize you have found yourself at a dead end and then have to either reload to a previous save or restart the whole game if you have no save far enough back or don't even know exactly where you missed something in the first place. The game also just has some sections that require luck and guesswork rather than using logic to solve problems. The biggest example of this is in the castle part of the game. You'll meet guards and you have to pick the right answer or you'll be thrown into a fight. Not only is this random gamble annoying, but the fighting system of the game is not great either. It's clunky feeling and you wind up taking a lot of damage as you're trying to fight them typically, and you don't necessarily heal afterwards, so if you're doing multiple of these battles, it can really wear you down unless you know where to find the healing items that are in the game. It just makes for a very frustrating combination at the end of it all. While these are some pretty major downsides, I do want to mention one thing that I found very interesting considering the age of the game. That is that this game has some randomized aspects to it. There are certain clues that you are told about or paintings that are different in different playthroughs. This will help you solve puzzles with the help of the manual that came with the game. Thankfully, that manual is available through Steam in PDF form, so that will keep you from being stuck due to the game now being only digital at this point. And while I was surprised to see this random element in the game, it certainly wasn't enough to make me enjoy the gameplay of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Personally, I used a walkthrough to get through this game, and even then still had times where I wasn't able to quite do exactly what I needed to quite right. This was particularly in the last section of the game where you had to find this narrow, invisible path, and it was kind of hard to tell where exactly I needed to be even with the guide, so things like that just even with a guide, you still could struggle a little bit with this game in some places. So I could only imagine what my frustration would have been trying to go in blind with this game. The gameplay here is just hard, it's difficult, it's punishing, and not in a sense of a way that you can just work hard to get better at the game. I imagine that for the time this was released, the art style was simply amazing. It still holds up pretty well today, as you have vibrant, colorful set pieces with a ton of detail in each scene. It is definitely a pixel art style and does kind of show its age, but there are probably equivalent pixel art kind of retro games from recent years that would be kind of on par with this. If there's anything that is the most glaring thing that doesn't hold up, it is the UI of the game. Just having bright text for your actions and not even having images for your inventory are definitely things that date the game quite a bit. For a game released in 1989 though, the level of detail and use of color probably placed it on the higher end of art style at the time, particularly within the genre, but it's quite possible even just within video gaming at large. Sound is also very good for the time, but is probably more dated feeling for us today. Hearing the MIDI style Indiana Jones theme is fun and would have probably been amazing when first released to be able to hear that in a game, but it definitely does feel a little bit old by today's standards. The sound is also used for humor, like the Indiana Jones theme playing when you change into your standard indie clothes. And while there are times that sound effects get a little annoying, like dripping water or the librarian stamping books in a never-ending loop, the sound is often used well and is enjoyable. Even with the librarian stamping book example, it's used as a form of humor within the kind of story itself, so it's used for a purpose, even if it can be a little bit annoying on the sound side of things. Overall, as I said, it's a little bit more dated on the sound side here, but I thought that it was well done, and definitely for the time it would have been probably very standout. I can only really recommend this game to two groups of people. Indiana Jones fans that want to experience every bit of content that involves the character, and fans of the point-and-click adventure game that want to experience the older games out of either devotion or nostalgia. Otherwise, I can't really recommend the game. The game is just too unfairly difficult. I don't mind games being difficult if it's a matter of reflexes, practice, or using knowledge or logic. That's just not the kind of difficulty you find here. Instead, this is a difficulty that is due to a heavy reliance on video game logic and punishing players for not finding early game items that are super difficult to find if you're not using a guide. And that just doesn't make for a fun game. It feels more like a game that's trying to pad things out by making you replay rather than actually just having a full story to walk through. And that's why I'm rating Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade a 5 out of 10. It's one of those cases where I feel that everything that was good about the game gets negated by the bad and frustrating. It's not enough to make me say that the game was a bad game, but also enough to make me not really be able to recommend it at all either. In many ways, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is a product of its time, and is just hard to digest in a more modern gaming environment. There have been so many improvements to the point-and-click adventure genre since this time, and that just makes the game not feel all that fun to play through. If you still want to, I would recommend playing with a walkthrough, but even then, you could probably safely skip this one and just watch the movie instead. As I feel like, in this case, the movie is definitely better than the game, at least today.